Good morning, everyone. Coming to you again this morning from Philippians chapter 1. If you read the blog, the one I typed up, you'll realize that we're taking a little bit more time to go through the book of Philippians than we did the book of Colossians. So we've kind of broken this first chapter of Philippians up. And this morning I want to read to you from Philippians chapter 1, verses 20 through 24. He says, Paul writes this from prison again. He says, "For I fully expect and hope that I will never be ashamed, but that I will continue to be bold for Christ, as I have been in the past. And I trust that my life will bring honor to Christ, whether I live or die. For to me, living means living for Christ, and dying is even better. But if I live, I can do more fruitful work for Christ. So I really don't know which is better. I'm torn between two desires. I long to go to be with Christ, which will be better for me. But for your sakes, it will be better that I continue to live." Here in this section of Philippians chapter 1, Paul talks very casually about living and dying. He doesn't seem upset or seem to be frightened by the concept of dying. Which would have been very weird for those people, those Philippian Christians, as they took meticulous detail to take care of the deceased. Dying was something that, they made sure they cleansed themselves and had all of these rituals around people dying. So this would have been very weird for the Philippian Christians to look at as Paul talks so casually about life and death here. As Paul continues there in those verses, Paul really says that he has two options here. The first option being he could continue to live for Christ and continue to preach the message. The second option would be to die and be in eternity with Christ, to be in eternity with God. So I wanted to take just a few moments and look at these two options Paul has. And maybe share just a few insights from that. The first option, Paul says, I could continue to live for Christ and continue to preach, continue to be fruitful for the work of Christ. And so here we see that the real positive for this option is that it would be better for the group if Paul continued to live. It would be better for all people if Paul continued to live and preach the gospel of Christ. Therefore, more people would be hearing the message and hopefully coming to Christ and accepting Him. The second option Paul has is that he could die and go to heaven. And when I say option, it's not the fact that God has given Paul the option. He can choose which one he's going to do. And I'll read you why he says that here in just a moment. But the second option would be much better for Paul. If Paul was to die and to go to heaven and be in eternity with God at that moment, man, that would have been awesome for Paul. No more chains, no more beatings, no more shipwrecks, no more imprisonments, no more going without food. That would have been much better for Paul. But Paul says later on, in verse 25, remember in verse 24 he says he's torn between these two desires about what he should do, what would happen. And in verse 25 he says, "Knowing this, I am convinced that I will remain alive, so that I can continue to help all of you grow and experience the joy of your faith. And when I come to you again, you will have even more reason to take pride in Christ Jesus because of what He is doing through me." Paul says because of this he feels called that he will stay alive and continue to preach the message of Christ. Wow, what a challenge. Paul puts aside his own selfish desires to go and be with Christ to say it will be much better for Christians, it will be much better for those who don't know Christ, for him to stay alive and continue to preach the gospel. And so that's what he's willing to do. I pray this morning that you and I would have that same type of heart, that if God continues to allow us to be alive, if God continues to allow us to get up and breathe and do the things that we are supposed to do, that we would continue to spread the gospel, that we would continue to preach the message. Each day, God either gives us life or He takes it away. And what a blessing if we could say the same thing as Paul. To live would be to live is Christ. I could preach Christ. To die would be to gain for me. And so today my challenge is to you that as long as God gives you breath and allows you to get up and do the things that it means to live, that you would continue to preach the gospel message, that you would continue to share the love of Christ, so that not for your own selfish ambition that you might be lifted up on a pedestal, but so that God might be praised, that God might be glorified. So that's kind of our challenge for today. As long as you're up and breathing watching this video, get out there and share the message of Christ with someone you know. Later.